Hey guys, welcome back to Zmari Talks. I am your host, Zmari, and it is such an honor to be here with you. So, guys, I have a great person here, and honestly, I am very curious about this person as well because I have a lot of questions to ask about his journey, his life, and just things that he has experienced. I have a fair idea of some things, but I just want to kind of hear him elaborate on it. And I think that he has a wealth of knowledge. Every time I talk to him, he has a wealth of knowledge and experience that he's always imparting and sharing with others. So, guys, welcome to the pod. Andrew. Oh God.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
See?
I'm good. Very happy to be here.
Very nice. I appreciate that. Have you ever done a pod before?
I have.
Yes. What type?
Okay, so I did one during COVID with a friend, and we were talking about personal finance back then. And I also have like about 3 appearances on the ICT podcast out of Jamaica.
Okay. You seem to have a lot of experience when it comes to podcasting, especially out of the country. I mean, which there as if. But tell us a little bit about who you are. Right? So just your journey of faith. I don't know if you grew up in a Christian family or like what your background is like, but what actually set that foundation for you as a man, as a believer?
I did grow up in a Christian home, so and I was born in the 80s. So just like all the 80s kids who grew up in Christian homes, you'd be very familiar with things like Fetcher Tales, Carman, Satan by the Dust, that type of thing. Bible Man, all that type of stuff. Flying House, you remember that?
Okay, no, I didn't grow up with you.
Okay, Superbook, you remember that?
No,
Right.
I'm an Irish. I'm sorry.
Okay, the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Good. So yeah, grew up listening to that stuff. And even reading Christian literature, having Christian comics. Like when I was a teen, the Left Behind movies were huge. Yeah. And back in those days, I think Christian content and Christian media wasn't as accessible as it is now. So, like late last year, I actually told my mom thanks for the sacrifices she made. But back in those days, if you wanted to get Christian books, you kind of had like the options. CLC, Christian Literature Center, or similar stores. You'd have to order it online or the Logos.
Right.
And you see that third one? That was like the holy grail.
It was, yeah. And it's still in some cases what is it?
Yep. So I remember having like illustrated Bibles, cassettes, and that type of thing. And the reason I told my mom thanks is because I realized, as an adult, that a lot of sacrifices were made to kind of create that foundation. Like why have Christian comics? Easy, because kids like art, kids are attracted to that type of thing. But there is this foundation being laid. So there is at least the awareness that there is a God and he has an opinion. There is the awareness that there is an afterlife. And there is the awareness that, okay, one day you're going to have to answer for it. So if you have that foundation, it's something I'm very grateful for. And even when I look at some of the patterns that they would have established back then, I'm very grateful. So simple things like my dad getting up, let's say 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and just praying. You walk around the house, start off with worship, you say things like, you worship you, Father, I exalt you, like all those patterns are still here. So even when I, as an adult wake up, it's kind of easy to fall into that pattern that we saw, right? And I'm like, my mom would go around to each of our rooms and lay hands on us while we slept, So it's really interesting, as an adult, to see the importance of those patterns, right? And I think it's really easy to kind of reflexively, kind of fall back on some of those things. So that's kind of like my foundation. I would have started off in the Pentecostal church, I think, how can I describe where I am? I guess I am still very much within the realm of the full gospel arena. Who am I? Firstly, I am a son of God, right? That is how I see myself. I don't see myself as a Trinidadian or an IT person or anything like that. I am first and foremost a son of God. Wherever God wants me to operate, that is what I'll do. But I am first and foremost a son of God, and I'm a king and priest, right? According to the Bible. So that is who I am.
I love the foundation that you talk about where your parents set, because it seems like you grew up in a good home overall. Not just, okay, well, yeah, we just do this thing, but you could see like the evidence in your parents' life as you became older. Okay, there's value in these little things. Because sometimes you could just take those things for granted, be praying for your kids, or you walking around your home and creating this atmosphere of worship. Do you still live with your parents?
No.
So is this something that you practice right now?
So what is interesting is that even though I don't live with my parents today, some of the patterns still live on almost exactly as they would delivered. So I don't have kids of my own, not yet, right? But I do bury people in my, and I do pray for certain people, right? I have a niece. And one of the things that is always on my mind is I want this girl to grow up knowing God, and I want her to walk in her purpose. She's like 3, but my mind is already there, right? And so, I pray for my friends. I think about their marriages. I think about their futures, even people's development. That is something that is on my heart as well. Like, when I meet friends at church and we talk, the thing that I like to hear the most is how someone had a victory, or how someone would have overcome something, or how someone would have interacted with God, or gained some kind of side comfort or something like that. I think it's always a question to, interface with my brothers or sisters, and you get that sense of, okay, well, here's what happened to me this week type of thing. Yeah. So the thing that has stayed is this is how you carry people. You understand? So back then it would be like, okay, my parents praying for us in terms of passing exams and doing well in school and so on. But really, the thing that has stayed is how you carry people, and even how you extend your concern towards them, and even into their respective futures.
That's good. You seem from just interaction with you before, but even hearing you speak now, that you have a very key interest in other person, like their development, their growth, their faith even. But is that something that you would say, yeah, you that's an intentional thing to you?
No, I'll say yeah. And it wasn't always like that, to be honest with you. It kind of, I guess part of it was nascent in a way. It had to develop, right? It isn't something that happened overnight. And I was not always like that at all, right? And there are some things that I can remember. I'll give you a story. I remember getting whipped because my brother came home late from an arcade that I introduced him to,
Right.
right? I got licked to something he did, but really I introduced him to it, right? And I remember getting home that afternoon. I didn't see him, right? And I was like, shucks, this guy went to the arcade. I knew it, right? And he came home like 5 p.m. And what back in those days, school would be out at 2:15, 2:30, right? He gets home at 5. Of course, well, he had to answer for where he was all the time. And then you were at the arcade. But, I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about the fact that even back then, my thought went towards, okay, well, what was the choice he made? Did he choose to do the right thing? Or did he go do the wrong thing? Right? And of course, at that age, I'm thinking about the fact that he did the wrong thing because I introduced him to the wrong things.
Yeah, it is recognize the influence.
That's right. Right? And so that is something that obviously has stayed with me up until this day because I am right, like it happened yesterday. Right? But that thing about, okay, well, if you have the ability to steer someone towards a particular feature, what is that feature you want to steer them towards, and how do you do it for that particular person? Yeah, so this has been something that has developed over time, And I think that as I grew closer to God, how I saw persons certainly has changed. Right, I learned to value people. Right, I think once you start to understand the love of God, you learn to value people. All right, and when you become more like Christ, even what it means to lay down your life to your friends, that becomes, I think, clearer.
Did you have a culture of this in like your family represented this too, or
Yeah, actually, when I think about it, yeah. And I'm thinking about how hard my parents would have worked to put us through school. Right? I am even thinking about the sacrifices my mom would have made to get me to like special education in the earlys, right? And even some of the things that she would have done for my siblings, that you can really see the sacrifice, you know. And I would even say that I wasn't mature enough at the time to really process that important with sacrifice, right? Sacrificing your going um very much beyond what you are comfortable doing, right? Very much beyond what you are accustomed to doing to make something happen. And in that case, it is for somebody else, you know, her kids. So it was something that I definitely had to kind of grow into.
yeah? You talked about education. What field were you studying?
I see, no? Yeah, so I have a diploma in computer engineering. I have a bachelor's degree in computer and information systems. I have a master's degree in IT management. And I have a few certifications in things like machine learning, IT governance, change management, and project management, and some other stuff.
What developed that desire to learn so much?
I had a good question. So funny. I actually wanted to stop after my diploma because I was thinking, man, I want to go to Bible school and become a pastor or a preacher. Uh, yes, and my mother,
See that?
that's right. And my mother encouraged me, hey, go back to school and get a bachelor's degree. Thanks, mom. After that, I actually did do something in Bible school, right? BSM for like 2 years. I felt like, yeah, it was time to go back and do my master's degree. While doing my master's, kind of when I formulated a sort of career plan. So when I do my master's, I was an internet applications developer, which is a kind of fancy way of thing, like a web developer, programmer type of thing. So I would write code and build websites and that type of thing. I had this plan, and what I did was I looked at the resumes of PIA, right?
Right.
So I'm sure you would have put this saying success leads tools, right? So I would have looked at all these resumes. You know, I wanted to know where people studied, what they had on their resume in terms of qualifications. And I also wanted to look at which projects they took. And out of all the resumes, I wanted to know what the path from being very technical was all the way into like a leadership position. What sort of positions or roles should I get into and which ones should I not take? It is very important when imagining your career to know which jobs to not take. I would say you have to hear about that tonight. A job might look really, really good. And what do say? Don't take it. Don't take it. There was one job offer that I had like back in 2020. This company was gonna give me $7,000 more a weekend at the time. And God was like, no, don't take it. Yeah. And mind you, they wanted to have me on the spot in the interview. And that was a no. The company doesn't exist today. Right? Like I think within 2 years, the company went belly up.
Oh.
But of course, it takes a girl who lives outside of time to tell you, don't take that job. Right? And even when I think about it, if the company still existed and did not go belly up, right? It would have been that the way I was supposed to develop or what I was supposed to learn, I would not have learned as yet in that role. So I would have started off as a web developer. And the plan back then was go into finance, go deeper into finance, and then work my way up into a strategic role position, right? And so when I was in web design and another type of thing, I was working in corporate communications. And I was pretty much exposed to like digital marketing and that type of stuff. And that was like about 6 years ago. So that was like 2015 to 2019, right? And I got laid off from that job, right? But I was good. And I ended up in a public financial reform company.
Okay.
So that is the first move into finance. And then I ended up in a merchant bank as a strategy analyst. So that kind of collapsed the second two steps into one move. And now I'm an actual, IT manager, right? So the plan actually did work more or less exactly what it was supposed to. When I realized that the plan worked, I realized that it was not me doing anything.
Right.
Well, outside of obeying, right? Even imagining career, there is that temptation into being deceived that this stuff is happening or you're experiencing success because you are so good.
Yeah.
Right? That's all right. Right? The Bible talks about one person planting, another person watering, and God giving the increase. That means you have your part to do. Right? You go to the classes, you get the seed, you study, right? You water, but then you have to trust God to the result. Right? Because to be quite frank, I'm sure that there are other persons who would have attempted to make a similar journey, and their path is going to be different from mine. All right. So you don't want to get deceived into thinking, aha,
Oui.
or not even this is way is aha, I did it. That deception is what I'm talking about. You have to avoid that, right? And so when I think about the strategy analyst role, I remember I did the interview and then I was asked to do an assessment. The deadline for the assessment was the same day I had to fly out of the country and take a work trip. And I remember kind of doing the thing in a hurry, right? Because I had to work late and then I had to pack and then flies, right? I did not do well in the exam at all. In fact, I don't even think I passed it. The company calls me locally, couldn't get me because of course I'm out of the country and I'm rooming. And they sent me an email. I tell them to call me again via WhatsApp. They call me and they tell me to do over the exam. I said, hey, I'm gonna be here for a couple of weeks. Can you wait until I get back? They said yes. That's right. So they waited until I got back to let me do over the exam.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do over the exam, I pass, and I get the job. Right? So you see that happening there?
Yeah.
That's right. That is not me.
Yeah.
That is good. Alright? Alright. Went there, learned some stuff, and I didn't stay there long. Again, that is also good. Alright? And then this opportunity opens up, which is where I am now. And I realized, okay, that is the move. And even like what I did between there, in terms of doing some consulting and getting exposed to like advanced AI projects and so on, even that was quite abroad, right? And so I would say in navigating a career, it's also very important to understand that even if things are up or things seem to be down, you have to understand that God is there, right? So, when you go to work and you have to face the boss from hell, God is there, right? When you have to go into the office and people try to set a trap for you to make it bad and get fired, God is also there. Even if you do get fired, God is there. So I spoke about getting laid off in 2019. I said that was a good thing. That was a wonderful thing. And I would say that was like the platform for me that moving forward, right? So I got laid off in 2019, but I had a plan. I said if I got laid off, I'll get this lump sum and I'll use it to pay off my tuition for my master's and then use the remainder of money to go and do some certification, right? And that's exactly what happened. I got laid off. I got this money, paid off everything, and I got laid off on a Friday, and I would have started a part-time role in a company with a company from the US on Tuesday, right? So even the gap there was really fun, and I was able to make almost the same amount of money because of the conversion, right? Right. So I'm doing this while working way less hours, right? And I'm still able to cover rent and bills and everything. So to me, it's like, okay, working less hours means I can focus on my master's thesis. And that's pretty much what happened, right? So it was not huge, bro, right? So what just kind of, should the things around so that I can have the space to focus. And finishing that thesis was stuck, right? It really was, but it needed to happen that way. And it might have been a bit uncomfortable, but in hindsight, that was the perfect way to happen.
I want you to continue, but I kind of had a question where, and you kind of mentioned like the hindsight. How did you know the voice of God? Because it is one thing that people kind of mess up. And is this from God? Is it not from God? Am I hearing correctly? It looks crazy, basically. But how did you know the voice of God in making those decisions? Or is it that hindsight, you look back and say, yeah, that really was the voice of God?
It's both. And what I'll also say is that you have to become trained in hearing the voice of God. All right. You have to learn to hear the voice of God. The Bible says that my sheep know my voice, and the voice of another they will not follow. That means you have to learn to hear the voice of God. Now you have things like, in the multitude of counsel, plan succeed. So you can kind of get confirmation from other persons and so on. But there's going to come a day where you have to make a decision and you have to trust God to suit. Right? In the same way, Gideon would have put out the peace and say, Lord, make the ground wet and make the peace dry. And then he does again, make the peace wet, make the ground dry. On both occasions, he trusted God for a response in him. So people might say, nah, Gideon was kind of cowardly. Maybe. But he had enough faith to do that and test what it is he was hearing. Right? So I would also say that there is that thing you can do. You can actually test what it is you're hearing. But you have to pray about it and we ask God to train you to hear him. Right? So in the early, I would have spoken to like my pastor about certain moves. And there's one move in particular I did not move. Back in 2017, I got the offer to be a chief technology officer. I was like, wow, big title, so cool. My pastor was like, I wouldn't do that for you. In hindsight, and I'll say, again, thanks my pastor. In hindsight, it was good I did not make that move. Right? I think if I had done it back then, that would have been a horrible move to make. It would have been a very premature and ill-advised move. All right. So, you can talk to others and, kind of get a sense of what God is saying that way. But at some point, you have to mature and get to that point where you hear God on your own. All right. So, like, even when there was one job I had where I lost it, and like the same week, right? Another company said, "Hey, do you want to come back and work for us?" And God said no. At that moment where it looks like, man, this is from God, he saw what was going on, he had a plan. That could look like God in him.
Yeah.
But what is saying, no, don't take it. I would say you have to really train yourself, and also it doesn't hurt to take some time and make sure that what you're hearing is God. All right. So even when I got this job, I got other offers at like the same time. I got the offer for this on a Wednesday, and I got the offer for another job at the same level on a Friday. So of course it's like, which one do you choose? The salaries are around the same, the rank is the same. All right. The environments aren't the same, the people aren't the same. So which environment does God want you in? That is the question. All right. And I prayed about it, and God said, hey, don't go here. And the other post, I had to tell him like about 3 or 4 times no. He said, hey, is that, you want more money or something? And I said, no, the money isn't it. Right. And one of the persons who interviewed me somewhere I know come to it, so I was like, hey, I know you're, you wanted to give our offer and so on, but I have to let you know, hey, I prayed about it. And God said no. Right. And I did it because I had to honor the guy, brother. Which, it was to say, thank you for having me on the panel. Thank you for considering me. But, the fear the Lord, can't take that one. And to go here instead.
I just had a question when it comes to trust. Not your trust, but like developing God's trust in me. Because, of course, he could present these two things to you and say, choose this. But you could be enticed by the more money and the different things and not walk away from the thing that he tells you to walk away from. So, what was your journey of building trust with God?
I think similar to Gideon, by learning how to obey even in small things, right? And learning to be faithful even in small things. The Bible says, he who is faithful in little is faithful in much. And therefore, even with jobs I didn't like to do, right? Having to people that I didn't like to work with, I would still show up on time, right?
Right.
And still do my absolute best, even though I thought, man, the tasks that, as you know, I would be assigned would mean, but even in that, I would get my very best, right? And so it's important to really understand that you are working for the Lord. God will have given you the job, And God is really the one who pays the salary. Not necessarily, not really the company. Yes, the company is the mean, but God is the one paying the salary. And so once you have that backdrop, I guess it gets a bit easier to understand, okay, I'm doing this for the Lord and with the Lord as well. Right? So how you conduct yourself on a job is important. And I guess it's also important to understand that you are representing him as well. Right? So it goes even beyond just, hey, I have a job, I have money and I can pay tithes now. It goes beyond that, right? But really learning to do well with these small things. That is important. Turn up the class on time. If you are in a group project, contributing to a group project, pay attention in class. Those things are really, really important. And the thing is, when I think about it, the job I got laid off from, I didn't have the best experience there. But when I look at it, I made the most of it and I was grateful with that job, even though I didn't have the best experience. Right? And then even the jobs that came after was the same thing in terms of me getting my very best. Right? I had projects that would make almost no sense. Things that were difficulty were like, really, really tight deadlines, right? But even inside of that, I'll just give, my absolute best. And so you find that over time, what God will see is, if I give this guy something to do, he's going to do it.
Oh, how do we not become resentful in a sense for the menial things or for the things that you might like, oh, it doesn't make no sense. Because oftentimes we would lose character in those moments where it's like, forget this, I just gonna show up and do what I want and other please. I'm not gonna give my best anymore. So how did you posture yourself or posture your heart where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna be faithful despite.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned to have early in my career, even while I was studying, what I would call icons, right? So I was exposed to something called the Global Leadership Interlink, GLI, and there's a campus division. And there are icons of GLI campus. You have Joseph, Esther, Daniel. Right? Those are just three icons that I can think of. And so, like Joseph, what I thought about was everywhere he went, he prospered because the Lord was with him. So even though he had Potiphar's wife making circumstances kind of uncomfortable, he was still faithful and still comfort, right? And so having those people to kind of reference and look back on makes it easy to portray yourself because you can, read an Esther, read a Daniel, and then say, okay, this is how I will respond, right? So in my career, I've had to lean on these icons. One person I can always relate to is Daniel, right? And Daniel chapter 6 verse 4 says that they found neither corruption nor negligence in Daniel. And even when I think about some of the situations I've been in, where I've had to be very, very careful, it is because, because this is what Daniel went through, right? And so that's kind of how I would have posted myself by, going back to what the word says. And again, you have these icons. And thankfully, these guys who have been in situations that I can relate to, and I could just extract a response, right?
Good.
I would have described a 5-year plan that worked out like to a T. The reality is, it's not like, okay, you had this 5-year plan and it just worked out just like that, like magic, all right? Even before I made the first move, I had other hard work to do, hoping that it would pay off, right? My master's degree, finishing that was tough, right? I had many group projects and they were painful, I'm telling you, right? It is really a difficult thing to leave work on time, to up to class on time, get home, study, and then someone says, man, I can't do my part because I'm just so busy. That tells me that the intensity with which I'm engaging, he is engaging with that kind of intensity at all, right? So you have to have faith that even though you have that to deal with, I can still pass and get an A. Because guess what? He has faith in you that you would be the worker and she's gonna get an A in this, right? So you have faith, even in terms of getting through this thing with success, and also that it will lead to something. I remember someone asked me, hey, why are you even doing a master's? You can do a master's degree and end up in the exact same spot in your career. But by faith, you have to curse that thing, curse those words, let them fall to the ground and die, right? And pray for success in your career, right? And that is something I was throwing as well. Like, it is important to pray into your career. Don't just take it for granted and be headed and not detailed. Don't take it for granted, pray it. Yes, the Bible said it, pray it and declare it over your life, right? So, in fact, thanks again to my parents, even when I think about it, my mom used to pray that before we even left the house, right? And declare that over us, right? Even to have faith that the patterns that you are following are correct, and even to have faith that God will lead you to the right people, right? So I am thankful for will be my lecturers, especially the ones I met at Orthodox. Guys like Arthur Sid, Fahim Muhammad, Abdullah Muhammad, Adam Mansurin, Lorenzo Hodges. I mean, I could just go on and on. I'm thankful for every single one of them. But every single one of them, had a massive impact. Warren Sipdar, had to throw the name out there, right? And I'm thankful for all of them because they had a major, major impact. So I'm very grateful for all the lecturers because, man, I learned a lot. And there are things that I apply even to this day. And also, what I think is good is it's good to interact with these people because it makes, how can I put this? It makes certain things seem more achievable, right? Of course, the networking aspect is very good, right? But to interact with like the CIO of VGC or the CEO of it makes you realize, oh, this stuff is really attainable. Of course, being positioned so proximately to these guys, it means that they can actually speak to them and ask, hey, how did you get here?
Sorry.
What advice do you have? Like Arthur Fidd said, hey, Andrew, you've been very fascinated by technical things. You have to learn to become fascinated by the non-technical things. In other words, the boring parts of, well, in my space, IT. That'll be things like policies, governance, right? So when I first got into that type of thing, I have to admit, it was a kind of hard pill to swallow because it wasn't as exciting as AI.
But that comes back to what you said with the multitude of counselors. Just having those persons who either already achieved it or on their way to achieving it, it can give you that perspective, so that you can become more all-round in a sense. They cover blind spots that you may have.
In hindsight, this is one of the hardest things I had to do. But I actually did something called the Business Development Program while doing my master's degree, right? Yeah. How I managed to do that, I don't know. That was the grace of God, right? But it was something almost like Bible school for business people. And I did it, and I think it was important because what it did for me was it put a necessary sort of philosophical foundation for understanding some of what the business world would talk about. So, for example, the business world would talk about creativity as a sort of unique combination of ideas or a unique way to execute something at earlier ages, right? In BDP, what I was taught was creativity is expressing the mind of the creator, right? Me, that's creativity. So if let's say you are a Christian in the business space and you have to meet some sort of KPI and you have some interesting constraints, your approach is, what do you want?
That's good.
Right? That is creativity for you. Creativity for somebody else is, what did I hear someone talk about on their TED Talk? Oh, that sounds good. Let me go do it. That is creativity for them. Papa. When you're on the job, you're looking for God and other stuff, right? And you're representing, right? I remember one time, someone told me, I don't know, what you just pray to now, but whatever it is, it's looking fair. Right?
So you talk about performance. You talk about working forward. However, most of the challenges that we experience on the workplace are more people challenges. Performance things are things that we can learn, skills that we can develop. But most of our conflicts are because of either egos or bad interactions, not having emotional intelligence, whether it's on your part or the other person's part, is more of a social dynamic that causes the issue. So how do you navigate that in your field, especially having climbed this corporate ladder like this?
By always going back to asking God what He wants, right? And also having faith. I remember there was one job, that really wasn't particularly good. And there was a piece inside of me that said, no matter what happens here, my trajectory will be undisturbed, right? So God will have given that assurance. And also, even in the midst of that, it's also important to guard your heart, right? Meaning that people may say things, lie about you, accuse you, and that type of thing. But that doesn't mean that you then say, aha, I will do for them. No, right? Do what God says, right? Everybody else might come late, and you might be questioned, but your job is to come early. I remember one time I was invited to a staff party, and everyone was drinking or wine and that type of thing. And the comment was, Andrew, you think I got that you? Do you expect that I would dance and behave like you guys? Of course not, right? So I would come, but in that space I wouldn't drink alcohol. I would just drink coconut water, say hi, hello, and then leave, right? Was he there? Yes, he was. Did he behave like everybody else? No, he didn't.
Yeah.
All right. And so, I would say posturing yourself to reflexively obey God. That's the most important thing. And to hear, right? I would also say that if you don't hear God saying anything, it is also important to understand that stillness is a posture, right? So you will say, like, be still and see the hand of the Lord, all right? So stillness is a posture. If you don't hear anything, do not make a move. If you feel pressure to move and you don't hear anything, don't move, right? Patterns are important. Patterns in the word of God, because you want to find a way to respond to something. And, I remember there was one time I saw a trap being set, right, in the office. And I thought about the best response. Do I go along and be the young, ambitious professional that, will willingly lend his hand to anything? Or do I say no? In the end, I said no. And the entire thing fell apart, right? And I guess one of the things that is important is that as a child of God, you are supposed to be hearing the voice of God. The Bible says that as many as are led by God are the sons of God, right? So even in that situation there where that trap is like, I learned to see that thing before it happened. And not even that I learned to see it, it's like really, God said, hey, God highlighted the thing, hey Andrew, this is a trap, right? So it's important to develop a sort of, I'll use this word, a sort of prophetic capacity to hear the voice of God, to know how to navigate. To me, being prophetic is hearing the voice of God and obeying, right? To obey is to hear. If you didn't obey, you didn't hear properly, right? So you have to learn how to posture yourself. You also have to learn what your heart towards others should be in that situation, right? I remember one time someone accused me of something. It wasn't true. And I really, really wanted to make an example of that person. And God said no. God said forgive them. So I decided to forgive that person and act as if the offense never happened. It bothered the person more than it bothered me, because the person couldn't look at me in my face for quite some time, because you know what you did, right? But the important thing is to go back to what the word of God says, right? And really hear what it is God is saying to do. And sometimes He will say fight, sometimes He will say no rest, sometimes He will say go now, sometimes He will say wait, right? So that is like my best description for navigating the challenges. And the thing is, what is important to understand is that there is something that God wants out of these, right? That is a good place to start. What does He want from me? How does He want me to adjust? And sometimes, to be frank, you might just want it to leave the job and go somewhere else, right? That could be a thing. Or Sometimes God will say, no, you need to learn how to fight. Right? There's a verse in the Bible that says, you have paid my hand for. Sometimes you'll get a fight, and you go to an jump and the fight come. And you go to an jump and the fight comes because God is training your hands.
That's good.
Right? And I also think it's important for people to have that perspective, because you can look at it yourself and say, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? And then sort of take a self-help route that says, let me fix myself as if that's possible to, steer my life towards a different people, all right? But really, you have to understand, what is God doing?
Yeah.
All right? And there's a particular situation I can think of in my life that happened. I was recurring during COVID, and it didn't stop until when at the very end, I gave a very different response, right? And it wasn't even like a corporate thing, it was just like an interpersonal thing that was uncomfortable and strange, but it stopped when with the very last person, I decided to not do the thing that I always did. God really wanted to get something else. And I had to stop and, I wrecked myself a bit and say, all right, I'll do what God wants to. And that is really important, right? In everything, life, relationships, career, what have you, it's important to understand that what God is doing is making you like Himself, right? So it talks about making sure that Christ is formed in us. So therefore, if they have people trying to take on the job, that is the thing I would encourage everyone to kind of look at, right? Am I simply running away from this thing? Am I being passive? Or am I engaging with this thing accurately so that Christ is formed in me? Right? Last year, one of the things that I wrestled with for a while was the question of why Christ went back to those disciples. Every last one of them betrayed. They walked with you for 3 years. And then they say, nah, I ain't know. People went back preaching, they just went back to whatever they were doing before. As if nothing happened. I'm like, why did they not go back and get 12 new friends and start over? And the answer what I did for them, they could say, if Christ did not go back to those guys who saw them, then what was he journey for? Alright? And also, Christ himself said that mercy, justice, and truth are the weightier matters. And for the fourth one, mercy. Right? So even with people on the job, these are things to consider. What is that dimension of Christ that he's trying to mold? When I think about that person who have made that false accusation, even though that person probably doesn't understand what I did, but just have mercy and ask as if we never did the thing in the first place. I know inside of me, the very thing that I wrestled with last year with what about, he is now building inside of me and he's saying, this is what I wanted to do. The same thing I wrestled with last year, or did I actually work on it now? Right? And that is, I think, one of the main things to understand. Right? So, I think when it comes to the career journey, I guess I could summarize it like this. Be aligned and tap into what God's plan for your life is. In hindsight, I would say that 5-year plan was not me. Right? I didn't even know it was born at the time, but it was all. And I simply walk in it, and all the right doors open. So in terms of which you could take, which one's not to take, that is God. Right? So you have to pray in your ear and have a heart inclined to hear the voice of God, as it was saying. Icons are important, right? I would have mentioned Esther, Daniel, and Joseph. There are many others, but it really the top icons that you can look back at, right? I would have spoken about lecturers and even people at church, right?
Destiny helpers.
Yep. I say, have people at church who you are advancing their career. What can you learn from them? And the thing is, sure, I build my faith, but then what can you learn from someone who is in legal or accounting or what have you? And not even the folks in your age group, but the older folks who would have way more experience. Right? What can you learn from them? And I would also say, in terms to the day-to-day stuff, right? You have to have a posture where your heart is towards pleasing God and obeying what God says, listen to the voice of God. Let that be your posture. And even when it comes to faith, I'm thinking about Jeremiah 29:11. You really have to have faith that God really does care about your career. I think that's important. Right? So there is a verse in the Bible that says God will perfect everything that concerns you. that needs a career too. It needs to who cares about it. And I can say that now because when I did my master's, I was trying to save up for it, and I didn't have the money in time when the program was going to start. The program started in September. I thought it was going to start in January the next year, and that wasn't the case at all. And even when I couldn't see where the money was coming from, God provided. And I started back in 2016 when GATE introduced the test, right? And when I did my master's degree, the school actually said, hey, we're going to give a GATE guarantee. Even if they pull GATE, the first wouldn't game. And again, that was good because at that time, that was the time I had to go to that master's degree. Had I delayed, I didn't know what would have happened. So it's also important to obey God in a very timely manner. If God says do this now,
That's good.
Do it now, not next week, right? Because even when I think about it, now, the program I did back then doesn't exist today. It doesn't even offer today, right? So it means if I tried to do later on, my career trajectory might have been widely different from what it was, right? So I think that is, what comes to mind when it comes to navigating a career journey. In the voice of God, being in tune, being obedient, and learn to be faithful, right? Yeah, and also kind of understanding what is important. People often think about being visible and being popular and that kind of thing on the job, but it's important to understand that God will establish you, right? It's important to understand that if God wants to make you a person of influence, He will be the one that will do it, and He will be the person that will take it to account. I know that the career advice typically is do things to be visible, but you know what I've seen in my career? That the people who do things for visibility do the easy and insignificant thing. Because just what in the corporate world we call that low hanging fruit, right? Low hanging fruit is that so far away, or I should say a very short path to visibility. But the harder stuff that take years to pull off, people run from those things. Because it doesn't make them look good immediately. Right? So I would also say, use biblical principles to make it clear and really learn to rely on God as we go forward. Right? You might be doing a degree and at the end of it, just go to okay. You might be in a career and you don't know how to pilot and making it move. You have to trust God, but also ask God. Because you don't want to like go to school, do an MBA, and then just say, okay, you had door open. Sure. I'm told to open. But what is he saying? There, don't just stop at, okay, God, the red door open. Okay, cool. I know something. I trusted God that the red door would open, right? But you know what? It meant applying for job. It meant going on interviews. It meant talking to different people, making connections. It also meant saying no to job. I have said no to quite a few jobs that people really wanted to give me, and I was like, nope. And they were, so much surprised and stunned that I would have said no. But I had to say no because that's what God wanted. Yeah. And also, I think it's important to understand too that God knows better. So there might be jobs that you want, and there might be a particular career path that you have in your mind that God might say, no, this is not it. And it isn't even that what you want is bad, right? It might be logical. But God might say, hey, I should do this in less time than anything. And that might be the reason why you have to just make the choice. But no matter how it looks, you have to learn to just obey God, right? So I guess that's something I can say. As I went on in my career journey, I learned to be less and less logical. I learned to just rely on God. Because if I did, think about it now, I think that in hindsight, I probably thought that my career during might have been a bit longer, to be honest. So for anybody who is listening to this and they are thinking about their career journey, if you're in a grind, meaning that you are in a program or you are pursuing some sort of certification or qualification, I would say keep at it, right? The Bible says, for this to show itself approved, and even though that First is used in the context of ministers. It also applies to your career. And what I would say is, if you put in the work, what is going to come, right? That was also about sowing and reaping. It isn't just a nice thing to talk about on Sundays, but it's like a law, right? So this is also why being faithful on the job is important. If you are a good employee, all right, you come on time and you go to you're supposed to do, and you serve your boss well, you find that those seeds will bear fruit in the people, right? In fact, one mistake I made when I think about it was I was not very respectful to one of the first managers I had. And I even had to call him recently to apologize. Be quite frank. Because I realized, oh man, I really wasn't a good employee to that guy. And I remember even back then, I knew it. And I would actually create Lord tell me to do right by this man. Because I knew that this guy was super patient with me while at the time I was working through my immaturity. Alright? So that's kind of what I would say. I would say, no matter where you are in your career, be faithful and continue to invest in yourself and invest in a relationship with God, and God will see it and he will eventually respond. There is a verse that says that the word of the Lord tested Joseph until his character was proven, right? So that is also another thing. You can delay a process or you can accelerate it. Or is looking at what you do because there's going to be a response from heaven.
Andrew, I am honored. Honestly, I just feel I should have said my friend who was at the previous podcast from Harry Button. And this entire season feels so different from every one that I've done before. And I think it's just you guys just coming and laying a lot of layers of not just faith, but really putting God first in their life. And I don't think that people have practical ways or examples to see how to apply their faith in certain settings, how to apply their faith for healing, how to apply their faith for their career, how to apply their faith for building a family. Sometimes we've been in church so long, or we've been in Christendom so long, that we hear these things and it becomes cliche to us. Or we see it from a surface level, but the practicality of it, of literally working it out, we're not able to get to that point. And it's a level of obedience and submission as well that we're not necessarily always willing to do. So I'm very grateful that you could come and share this perspective when it comes to career, but not just career, just literally just submitting yourself and honoring the voice of God in your life and being obedient to that voice of God and just seeing how it has worked for you. Congratulations in every achievement that you have attained. And I'm pretty sure this is nowhere the destination or the full stop for you in your life. And it is truly an honor that you could come on this pod and share that with us. Truly sure.
I am honored and thank you for having me.
So guys, this is the end of this pod. This is Andrew. And thank you guys for sharing this episode with us. Have a great day.